Okay, this morning we're going to have some poetry from, I'd say, two geniuses. Not Mary and I, but the poets that we're talking about. The first one is a lady that was born in Wilmer, Minnesota, which is where we grew up. And her name was Susan Mosvik when she was in high school. Or in school, but she changed her name to her mother's maiden name when after she graduated from college. So her name became actually Reverend Susan Karen Haydahl. She was born 1946 and she passed away in 2013. She was a Lutheran missionary to Tanzania for 4 years. She was the sixth woman to be ordained in the ALC Lutheran Synod. She graduated from Theological Union in Berkeley in 1988, and she was committed to Palestinian cause and studied Arabic. She was proficient in Swahili, Arabic, German, Greek, Russian, Latin, and you will see in English as well. So she was a typical Wilmer girl. And the readings will be done by another typical Wilmer girl, Mary Latham. Yes, her mother's maiden name was, what was it again? What? No, your mother's maiden name. Hagen. So they were kind of similar to the Haydahl, anyway. But you kept anyway. Forget it. Get going. Okay. And the poems you're going to notice, the ones that she read and the one that I read are very different, and we're just going to be able to compare the different styles of poetry.
I was very honored to ask to illustrate her poems. And so we made a book, and she wrote, of course, all the poems. I didn't really touch a lot of the poems because I didn't feel comfortable. But the first poem she wrote was Wind. And I don't know if you can see it there, it's kind of skinny, but let's see. Moving softly among the languid willows and grasses of the wayside, the wind shakes her silvered tresses loose and deftly wields her comb. Then, as her piquant nature wills, she binds her hair and gathering her skirts about, goes her winsome way. So, then the second one I was going to read is called The Silent Forest. I think these are redwoods. I didn't know that. I knew nothing about redwoods when I was living in Minnesota, so. Bathed in mists and wrapped in dreams, the silent forest stands. As druids of an ancient world and rulers of that strand of bent and broken limbs that lift their penitential hands, and into the heights and depths they cry. But if the centuries hear them, they heed them not, but only pass them by. And then the third one, this one I didn't have an illustration for, but I liked it. The truth of it. White inches deep, the new fallen snow is loved by all until mobility is impossibility. And the wit will cry, I know, the snow's so white and the skiing's nice. But this sport, I'll have to quit and spend my precious energy simply shoveling it. That was really true of Minnesota. Oh, skipped one. Complaints of a well-bred duck. The life of a duck is not quite what most people think it would be. The atmosphere is not too dear to that of my well-being, and the nip of the frost quite froze off my wingtips and my tail, while the mud of the sloughs turns my feathers to hues unbefitting a duck such as I. However, no matter, as my end is the platter, I lost my place. My Hades, the spit on the fire, and when marinated and finally plated, I'd say, dressing is better than mire. And then the last one, be still and know. Be still and know mountains shake and foaming seas overthrow the insignificance of man and sneeringly bestow on him their ranting scorn. Be still and know nations rage and tyranny abounds throughout the kingdoms of the earth and echoes with the sounds of strife and torn souls. Be still and know terror reigns within the hearts of men and races fall and life declines. Be still, I say again, and know that I am God. I just thought, as I read this several times, that it was like describing our world right now. And it's so harsh. And so I'm going to read it again, and if you have any ideas about it, although John has stuff that he wants to talk about too, so anyway. Be still and know mountains shake, and foaming seas overthrow the insignificance of man and sneeringly bestow on him their ranting scorn. Be still and know nations rage and tyranny abounds throughout the kingdoms of the earth and echoes with the sounds of strife and torn souls. Be still and know terror reigns within the hearts of men and races fall and life declines. Be still and say again, I know that I am God. Well, that's it.
So if you have questions or comments for Mary's poems, go ahead.
Okay,
Well, that
Karen.
first stanza, I mean, the most recent earthquake that was huge was Turkey and Syria, and we remember the earthquake and tidal wave in Japan. But the heat wave that Kevin mentioned is so much like, you know, the earth overpowering us in a similar way. It stops us in our tracks and makes us realize that with awe, the power of God and God's creation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
David?
I like Kevin's comments, but the thing about it is I've noticed that recently I have more feeling of this living organism that we're living on this earth, and it's almost like the earth is now letting its antibodies go, or letting its things go to attack the bad things, and we're one of the bad things for the earth.
Comment.
I'll wait for the microphone just because the people online don't hear as well. I can tell if you hear. Nobody online? Oh, then I don't need a microphone because my voice is loud.
It's a physics teacher voice.
Oh no, I'm not bringing that one. I just have one word for kind of all of Sumazlik's. It's visceral. Her language just evokes to me a gut feeling, and different for each of the poems, but it's visceral. So.
Yeah. Are there any people here that write poetry or like to write poetry or try to write poetry? Peppy does?
I've tried in the past. My daughter writes poetry, which I find her amazing when she does it. But I wanted to say thank you for the inspiration, Mary, because one of the things that I am hoping to do, one of the things that I'm hoping to do when Deirdre has gone off to college and school has started, and I kind of know the new norm for this school year, is for my own mental health to go back to painting, which I haven't done in many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And when you introduced it today, you talked about the illustrations with the poems. And I used to do calligraphy, and I haven't done that in many years too. And I have photographs from which I'm going to paint, all nature-based, because that's the one I love most. And I realized I also love poetry, and I do keep reading poetry. I will start the calligraphy again too. So thank you. I needed that.
I have one thing I want to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mary, you're an amazing reader. I hope you will read for us again often.
Well, it's funny because I started reading and, I thought, ooh, this is a lot like music, and so, every time it was different, and hopefully, inspired by the last thing that happened and the last thing that, entered my head. And, but it was so nice working with Susan Mosvik, because she was so complimentary. I just thought, wow, she asked me to do this, I didn't expect it at all. So that was very nice.
I would love to hear scripture or anything from you.
Well, good, thank you. Well, I knew I had to talk loud, and I have to say one more thing. When I was 8 years old, we moved in town. We used to live on a farm, and we moved into town, and the first time I stood up to read in front of the class, the whole class laughed, and I thought, what are they laughing about, And one of my friends said, well, you read so loud. And I guess it was just being on a farm, yelling out to my dad who was on the tractor somewhere.
I was going to make the same comment again, how well you read, Mary. Thank you, man. I write music and songs, I write plays and one screenplay, but when I was 17, I entered a poetry contest at Eastern Oregon College, 20 miles away from where I lived with my aunt and uncle, in a town less than 2,000 people. And I'd come from a high school that had more than 2,000 students. And I won the first prize in poetry that year, in 1968.
This is a terrific object lesson in why we should never underestimate what comes out of small towns. Wilmer, Minnesota is like a dot on the map. It's not that big. And yet, I mean, here we have Mary and John. I remember some years ago, when, you know, in our custom of having the Sunday after Christmas be a story instead of a sermon. And I read you a story that has been beloved by me for my whole life. It comes out of a 1950s Lutheran produced book of Christmas stories and poetry and pictures. And every year they came out with one of these books. And in there was a story called Ring in the New, about a New England widow on a farm who takes in a displaced person's family, and her experience of she agreed to do it, and then she's scared to death because she imagines how awful they're going to be, and they agreed to do it, and then they're scared to death because they imagine, you know, but then they arrive, and they discover they know Christmas carols in common, and they had dairy cows, and she has dairy cows. She weaves, the wife weaves, and, you know, I mean, it just, you know, one of those Christmas stories that just makes you tear up. Well, I get up here to read this story to you guys, and it's by Howard and Edna Hong. And Mary says, oh yeah, Howard Hong was my father's best friend. And I'm going, what do you live at the crossroads of everything? I'm just, Wilmer, Minnesota, my God, what's in the water that makes you guys so creative? I don't get it. Anyway, thank you, Mary.
Okay. Now, next, D.H. Lawrence, who was, he was English. His most interesting book, I think, is Studies in Classic American Literature. And when you look online, there's articles about him in the New York Times, just hundreds of them. And one of them is about how he was able to read, you know, Moby Dick and all the American classics. And then he's got this extremely insightful book about what those were, what the meaning of those were. And he came out with a statement: every American is a torn, divided monster. Okay? America is a nation of violence, cruelty, and conflict. Now, you know, if you look at it maybe from the point of view of Wilmer, Minnesota, you say, how can that be? You know, but if you look at it from the point of view of other places, it is, you know, they can interpret it and say it's violence, cruelty, and conflict. And we saw that, you know, in civil rights, in you know, Emmett Till situation is common in our history. He seems to look where we refuse to look. And then he was born in 1885 in England and died in 1930 in France. He was about 45 years old. So he spanned the change from the 19th century to the 20th century, which is kind of like the death of civilization. First World War, he wasn't in it, but he was going back and forth from England to Germany and France and understood what was going on. One of his quotes is, better die, well, here's, you know, he was moving so much. One quote was, better die than live a life that is a repetition of repetitions. And that, you know, and I'm guilty of repetitions of repetitions. But again, like the other poet, he knows all kinds of languages, French, German, English, and Latin. Okay, so I'm going to read some of his poems. I mean, his books are, another pile, but his poems are, this is all of his poems. He must have just poured out his mind daily to get all this out. And the first one, I'm just going to read a rhyming poem. Most of them don't rhyme, but he did a lot of rhyming poems, which is really difficult. I mean, I've tried to do a rhyming poem, I could get like 2 lines and then I'm done. This is called Autumn Rain, and I think it's about the death and destruction of World War I. Autumn rain. The plain leaves fall black and wet on the lawn. The cloud sheaves in heaven's fields set droop and are drawn. In falling seeds of rain, the seed of heaven on my face. Falling, I hear again like echoes, even that softly pace. Heaven's muffled floor, the winds that tread out all the grain of tears, the store harvested in the sheaves of pain. Caught up aloft, the sheaves of dead men that are slain, now winnowed soft on the floor of heaven, manna invisible, of all pain here to us given, finally divisible, falling as rain. And then another poem that I noticed reminded me of, Karen's always bringing figs. And this is a poem about how to eat figs. Figs. The proper way to eat a fig in society is to split it in 4, holding it by the stump, and open it so that it is glittering, rosy, moist, honeyed, heavy petaled, 4-petaled flower. Then you throw away the skin, which is just like a 4-sepaled calyx, after you have taken off the blossom with your lips. But the vulgar way is just to put your mouth to the crack and take out the flesh in one bite. The fig is a very secretive fruit. As you see it standing, growing, you feel at once it is symbolic and it seems male. And when you come to know it better, you agree with the Romans, it is female. And I can't read the rest of this about the fig as a female in church. Okay. But it's very long, and you can read it. I'll mark the page. Okay, and then he was very critical of English society, and was really good at criticizing everything. And this is here's especially of his modern society back then. And this poem is called "How Beastly the Bourgeois Is." How beastly the bourgeois is, especially the male of the species. Presentable, eminently presentable, shall I make you a present of him? Isn't he handsome? Isn't he healthy? Isn't he a fine specimen? Doesn't he look the fresh, clean Englishman outside? Isn't it God's own image, trampling its 30 miles a day after partridges or a little rubber ball? Wouldn't you like to be like that, well off and quite the thing? Oh, but wait, let him meet a new emotion. Let him be faced with another man's need. Let him come home to a bit of moral difficulty. Let life face him with a new demand on his understanding, and then watch him go soggy like a wet meringue. Watch him turn into a mess, either a fool or a bully. Just watch the display of him confronted with a new demand on his intelligence, a new life demand. How beastly the bourgeois is, especially the male of the species, nicely groomed like a mushroom, standing there so sleek and erect and pliable, and like a fungus living on the remains of bygone life, sucking his life out of the dead leaves of greater life than his own. And even so, he's stale. He's been there too long. Touch him and you'll find that he's all gone inside. Just like an old mushroom, all wormy inside, hollow under a smooth skin and an upright appearance. Full of seething, wormy, hollow feelings, rather nasty. How beastly the bourgeois is. Standing in their thousands, these appearances in damp England, what a pity they can't be all kicked over like sickening toadstools and left to melt back swiftly into the soil of England. Okay. Now this is a flip side. This is the opposite. This poem is called "We Are Transmitters," and it's kind of an inspirational poem. You'll find it contradictory to the other poem, unless you're a bourgeois man. As we live, this is called "We Are Transmitters." As we live, we are transmitters of life. And when we fail to transmit life, life fails to flow through us. That is part of the mystery of sex. It is a flow onward. Sexless people transmit nothing. And if as we work, we can transmit life into our work, life, still more life, rushes into us to compensate, to be ready, and we ripple with life through the days. Even if it is a woman making an apple dumpling or a man a stool. If life goes into the pudding, good is the pudding, good is the stool. Content is the woman with fresh life rippling through her. Content is the man. Give and it shall be given unto you is still the truth about life. But giving life is not easy. It doesn't mean handing it out to some mean fool or letting the living dead eat you up. It means kindling the life quality where it was not. Only if it is only in the whiteness of a washed pocket handkerchief. Yeah. Okay, now a little more criticism. And those of you who are older might not appreciate these, but I'll read them anyway. The first one is called Old People, and then the second one is The Grudge of the Old, but the third one is called Beautiful Old Age. So it's going to get better as we go along. Okay. Old people. Nowadays, everybody wants to be young. So much so that even the young are old with the effort of being young. As for those over 50, either they rush forward in self-assertion, fearful to behold, or they bear everybody a grim and grisly grudge because of their own 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 summers. As if it's my fault that the old girl is 77. Mary 76. Anyway, grudge of the old. The old ones want to be young, and they aren't young, and it rankles. They ache when they see the young, and they can't help wanting to spite it on them venomously. The old ones say to themselves, we're not going to be old. We are not going to make way. We are not going to die. We are going to stay on and on and on and on and make the young look after us till they're old. We are stronger than the young. We have more energy and our grip on life is harder. Let us triumph. Let the young be listless with their puny youth. We are younger even now than the young. We can put their youth in the shade. And it is true, and they do it, and so it goes. Anyway, how does he think of this stuff? Okay, beautiful old age. It ought to be lovely to be old, to be full of peace that comes of experience and wrinkled, ripe fulfillment. The wrinkled smile of completeness that follows a life lived undaunted and unsoured with accepted lies. If people lived without accepting lies, they would ripen like apples and be scented like pippins in their old age. Soothing old people should be like apples when one is tired of love, fragrant like yellowing leaves and dim with the soft stillness and satisfaction of autumn. And a girl should say, "It must be wonderful to live and grow old. Look at my mother, how rich and still she is." And a young man should think, "By Jove, my father has faced all weathers, but it's been a life." Anyway, I'm not going to read the ones that he does about women. They're just horrible. Anyway, I think a couple of times, yeah. Anyway, this is about the earth, okay? There are too many people. There are too many people on earth, insipid, unsalted, rabbity, and endlessly hopping. They nibble the face of the earth to a desert. Right, David? What? How he really feels about it. Yeah, right. Okay, a couple more here. The church. If I was a member of the Church of Rome, I should advocate reform. The marriage of priests, the priests to wear rose color or magenta in the streets, to teach the resurrection of the flesh, to start the year on Easter Sunday, to add the mystery of joy and resurrection to the Mass, and inculcate the new conception of the risen man. Loneliness. I never know what people mean when they complain of loneliness. To be alone is one of life's greatest delights. Thinking one's own thoughts, doing one's own little jobs, seeing the world beyond, and seeing oneself uninterrupted in the rooted connection with the center of all things. Okay, and he talks a lot about robots. As though he knew something about artificial intelligence, robots and machines. Just one on that, called Hold Back. Oh, men, living men, vivid men, ocean and fire, don't give any more life to the machines. Draw it away, for these horrible machine people can't live anymore except for a spell when the living cease to accept them as brothers and give them life. Machines of iron must be tended by hands of flesh, and robots must have encouragement from men of the vivid life or they break down. O men of life and of living, withdraw your flow from the grinning and insatiable robots. I think he was talking about people who are robots. Okay, now the last one. This one second to the last one, sorry. Okay, search for love. Those who go searching for love only manifest their own lovelessness, and the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. Okay, and this is the final one. I saw this written on somebody's wall one time when I was at his house. This is called Ship of Death, and it goes, one way and then it comes back and goes the other. So if you fall into despair in this thing, just wait a little while, okay? The Ship of Death. Now it is autumn and the falling fruit and the long journey towards oblivion. The apples falling like great drops of dew to bruise themselves and exit for themselves. So the apples fall and then there's a bruise, and that's the way that they have an exit for their lives. and it is time to go to bid farewell to one's own self and find an exit from the fallen self. Have you built your ship of death? Oh, have you? Oh, build your ship of death, for you will need it. The grim frost is at hand, when the apples will fall thick, almost thunderous, on the hardened earth. And death is on the air like a smell of ashes. Ah, can't you smell it? And in the bruised body, the frightened soul finds itself shrinking, wincing from the cold that blows upon it through the orifices. And can a man his own quietus make with a bare bodkin? With daggers, bodkins, bullets, man can make a bruise or break an exit for his life. But is that a quietus? Oh, tell me, is it a quietus? Surely not. For how could murder, even self-murder, ever a quietus make? Oh, let us talk of quiet that we know, that we can know, the deep and lovely quiet of a strong heart at peace. How can we this our own quietus make? Build then the ship of death, for you must take the longest journey to oblivion, and die the death, the long and painful death that lies between the old self and the new. Already our bodies are fallen, bruised, badly bruised. Already our souls are oozing through the exit of the cruel bruise. Already the dark and endless ocean of the end is washing in through the breaches of our wounds. Already the flood is upon us. Oh, build your ship of death, your little ark, and furnish it with food, with little cakes and wine, for the dark flight down oblivion. Piecemeal the body dies, and the timid soul has her footing washed away as the dark flood rises. We are dying, we're all of us dying, and nothing will stay the death flood rising within us. And soon it will rise on the world, on the outside world. We are dying, piecemeal, our bodies are dying, and our strength leaves us. And our soul cowers naked in the dark rain over the flood, cowering in the last branches of the tree of our life. We are dying, so all we can do is now to be willing to die and to build the ship of death to carry the soul on the longest journey. A little ship with oars and food and little dishes and all accoutrements fitting and ready for the departing soul. Now launch the small ship. Now as the body dies and life departs, launch out the fragile soul in the fragile ship of courage, the ark of faith with its store of food and little cooking pans and change of clothes, upon the flood's black waste, upon the waters of the end, upon the sea of death, where still we sail darkly, for we cannot steer and have no port. There is no port, there's nowhere to go, only the deepening blackness, darkening still, blacker upon the soundless, ungurgling flood, darkness at one with darkness, up and down and sideways, utterly dark, so there's no direction anymore, and the little ship is there, yet she is gone, she is not seen, for there is nothing to see her by. She is gone, and yet somewhere she is there, nowhere. And everything is gone, the body is gone, completely under, gone, entirely gone. The upper darkness is heavy as the lower, between them and the little ship is gone. It is the end, oblivion. And yet out of eternity, a thread separates itself on the blackness, a horizontal thread that fumes a little with pallor upon the dark. Is it illusion, or does the pallor fume a little higher? Ah, wait, for there's the dawn, the cruel dawn of coming back to life out of oblivion. Wait, the little ship drifting beneath the deathly ashy gray of the flood dawn. Wait, even so, a flush of yellow, and strangely, a chilled, wan soul, a flush of rose, and the whole thing starts again. The flood subsides, and the body, like a worn seashell, emerges strangely and lovely. And the little ship wings home, faltering and lapsing in the pink flood. And the frail soul steps out into the house again, filling the heart with peace. Swings the heart renewed with peace, even of oblivion. Oh, build your ship of death. Oh, build it, for you will need it. For the voyage of oblivion awaits you.
So what's the name? Pneumonia.